previous video called The Old Model of Leadership, I talked about how leadership has changed and how the expectations our teams have of us have shifted as the world around them has been through major cycles of advancement. I talked about 8 characteristics of old model leaders that were no longer effective and acted as signs that you should consider changing your approach if you recognize them in the way you lead. In that video, I stopped short though of sharing what you should aspire to. So in this one, I'm going to explore that in more detail. I'll talk about what the new model of leadership is and how you can adopt it. We now live in a more connected, more automated, and more virtual world than ever before. Now that's meant great advances, but it's also increased our levels of separation from each other, the levels of anxiety and stress that we experience, and our need to contribute to something larger than ourselves. From these changes, the new model of leadership has emerged, and it's characterized by 7 key qualities. The first is authenticity and vulnerability. Leaders are now expected to be relatable, human, and flawed. Authority and command spark resistance, while infallibility generates mistrust. Jacinda Ardern, former Prime Minister of New Zealand, is a strong example of how effective this new brand of authentic leader can be. Secondly, you have collaboration and service. Now, today's leaders don't need all of the answers, and if they continually provide them, their followers withdraw. The wisdom of the crowd, collaborative idea generation, and serving the team are the hallmarks of the modern-day leaders we admire. Unlike his predecessor, current Apple CEO Tim Cook focuses on collaboration and consensus, while at Microsoft, Satya Nadella's emphasis on employee growth and empowerment are hallmarks of servant leadership. The third characteristic of new model leadership is compassion and emotional intelligence. Now, we are all the stars of our own movie, so in order to influence and lead, it's crucial to connect with and understand people, recognize their challenges, and make them feel heard. Oprah Winfrey has built an entire empire around this principle. She's also leveraged the fourth characteristic, purpose and social responsibility. Isolationism is just no longer possible in a world that's more connected than ever before. Companies, countries, and organizations that only consider their own needs are doomed to failure, while those who understand their place in the overall ecosystem and work to improve it for others can capture unique success. Yves Chouinard developed one of the most socially responsible companies in the world at Patagonia, centering his efforts on environmental and ethical issues and becoming a billionaire, much to his own dismay, in the process. New model leaders also focus on the whole person, because in reality, work is a part of our lives, not a separate activity that we can step into and out of. The rise of remote working and always-on systems, cloud computing, and powerful devices has eroded the separation between professional and personal beyond repair. So effective leaders emphasize well-being, mental health, and care for the whole person, knowing that doing so is likely to improve performance. After suffering her own burnout, Arianna Huffington launched Thrive Global with a mission to reduce stress and promote well-being in organizations, forging it into a successful company in its own right. New model leaders also demonstrate high levels of resilience and adaptability. Stability in markets is a distant memory. Control is an illusion. And in a time where everything changes, every day the best leaders pivot, experiment, and improvise their way to victory, bringing their teams along for what can be an exciting ride. Brian Chesky of Airbnb epitomized this element of new model leadership when his company faced collapse in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. By shifting focus to long-term stays, aggressively cutting costs within the organization, and practicing radical transparency, Airbnb not only survived, but has gone on to ever greater success since. And finally, new model leaders demonstrate high levels of trust and flexibility. While personal preferences on this subject vary, remote and hybrid working are part of the business landscape now, and they're here to stay. As a direct result, the need to trust your team and give them the flexibility to deliver in a way that works for them is absolutely essential. Even if it was possible to ensure that everyone was at their desk focused on the right things all the time, the amount of effort it would take and the damage to morale would make it a losing proposition. Today's leaders need to set clear objectives, select the right people, allocate resources, and put their faith in the ability of their teams to deliver. Even before the pandemic took full hold, Toby Litka of Shopify spearheaded their transition to a digital by default company, prioritizing results over presence and allowing significant autonomy in regards to hours, locations, and working patterns. So as you see, the new model of leadership isn't just a theory, it's actively shaping the business and political world and our societies as a whole every day. Prioritizing people, flexibility, and purpose doesn't have to come at the expense of success. In fact, it's necessary. If you've recognized the need to change, there are 3 key steps you can take. First, work out where you are. Using the traits of old and new model leadership that we've discussed, consider your current approach and where you lean one way or the other. Now try to do that without criticism and without judgment. There might be elements of the old way that you want to retain, while in other areas you may feel that you'd be better served by moving to new behaviours. Now it's notoriously hard to assess your own leadership style, so consider getting some feedback or coaching as you conduct your analysis. Then once you've done that, create your leadership vision. You can allow your approach to leadership to develop organically, or you can take deliberate action to become the leader that you'd like to be. If the latter sounds more appealing, then your next step is to decide where you'd like to change, where you'd like to double down, and what your vision for yourself is. You must always be flexible and adapt to the situation and people, of course, but understanding where you want to enhance your strengths and adjust your behaviors is absolutely crucial to your evolution. Then finally, develop the skills that you lack and work on incongruent behaviors. None of us are perfect. After you've completed the first 2 steps, it's likely that you've identified at least one gap. Now, some of that gap will be made up of things you need to start doing, and the rest of it will be behaviors that you should stop repeating. Don't try to tackle them all at once, but take 1 or 2 at a time, create a specific action plan, and get to work. Coaching might be your best mechanism, or training, or it may just be deliberate awareness and action to improve and develop. Whatever the specific prescription, it's a continuous, lifelong effort that shows you new peaks to scale every time you reach the top of a mountain.